Welcome back. The Coast Guard's working on several major modernization programs. The highest profile one is the Polar Security Cutter. Rear Admiral Matt Lake is Assistant Commandant of the Coast Guard for Resources and Chief Financial Officer. At Sea Air Space, he tells me his service's financial management priority is a balancing act.
How do you balance frontline operations, the operations we're doing today, for example, on the southern border, and how do you balance that with recapitalizing the fleet of the future, because it takes several years of planning in order to get steel on target. And that's a really important balance to strike. We're at a point now in the Coast Guard where we've got to spend more resources and energy on recapitalizing the service while we sustain a heightened operational pace. Now, the good news is we've got strong support from our leadership in the Department of Homeland Security to do just that, to recapitalize concurrently with sustaining our surge operations on the southern border and elsewhere in support of the President's priorities.
What are the areas where you need to recapitalize the most quickly, in your view?
Yeah, so from my vantage point, that's probably in our cutter fleet. So we're still our ships. So we're still operating Coast Guard cutters that were built in the mid-1960s. That's one of the backbones of our medium endurance cutter fleet. So think of the ships that do drug interdiction, search and rescue, alien interdiction. All of that is done by ships that in some cases are 60 plus years old. And we've done an incredible job sustaining those assets, but we need to recapitalize those at speed.
The way that you'll do that is through a number of different programs. One of them I read recently is striking that the Guard has purchased a commercially available icebreaker, which is, I know, a big need that we've been tracking for a number of years on this program. What's the story behind that from a financial management perspective to be able to make that move?
Yeah, so it's really a story about acquisition success to an extent. Is a national priority to ensure the Coast Guard and our nation has sovereign presence in our waters. We're an Arctic nation. And there's other nations that like to think of themselves as Arctic nations, and some that truly are, that don't necessarily have our best interest in heart. And so it's really important for the nation to get capability in the Arctic as quickly as possible. And this was an opportunity. We had a ship that was available in the market that was not being used. And so the Coast Guard went about and received funding, also some legislative relief from Congress to be able to move quickly. And from the time we got that money appropriated to us, the time we got a ship was a matter of months, not years, which is a great accomplishment for the Coast Guard.
So is there a lesson that you learned from that you think would apply to other types of acquisitions for the Guard or for other services or even the civilian side of government?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, we're doing a lot of introspection on how we buy things in general, right? Most of our acquisition, strategies, policies, et cetera, even legislation, really were modeled off DOD, and they're designed to buy unique capabilities, state of the market in some cases. And the Coast Guard doesn't necessarily, sometimes we need that, but often we just need what's out on the market. And increasing the pace at which we try to use those commercial item, off-the-shelf type of acquisitions, I believe. One, we can do that more effectively in terms of schedule as well as cost, as long as we're willing to give up some performance and capability. And I think as a service, that's that makes sense for us.
You make a tremendous number of infrastructure investments every year too. What's the state? What are kind of the statuses of those infrastructure investments, and what are some of the biggest ones in your portfolio?
Yeah, so a lot of our investments in the past have been focused on rebuilding infrastructure damaged by hurricanes. And fortunately, as we've rebuilt resilience into those facilities. So we've seen, particularly in the Gulf Coast, where a hurricane rolls through. Right now, we just sweep the sidewalks off and go back to work. Somewhat of an exaggeration, but my point there is some of that resilience that we built into our infrastructure has been incredibly helpful in avoiding costs as well as ensuring we continue our operations in those locations. But in terms of other infrastructure investments, Really, those are focused on building out bases and facilities that are supporting our new assets that are coming online. So some of those big locations, Seattle, Washington, Charleston, South Carolina, Newport, Rhode Island, ports in Virginia, there are a number of other centers of gravity of Coast Guard assets. And it makes sense as we get these new larger vessels that we cluster those in these locations to take advantage of the increased infrastructure and maintenance that's required for some of these ships. On the aircraft side, similar story. We're making investments in hangars and new facilities to accommodate some of the new aircraft we're bringing online, replacing some of the old ones.
Mm-hmm. When you look at the Coast Guard's financial management posture from a risk management perspective, what's kind of on the horizon that you're thinking about trying to be aware of, prepare for potentially?
Yeah, I think as somebody that is looking at out years, I need to make sure that the assets we're buying are affordable and sustainable over the long term. You never want to buy a really expensive car and then can't afford the oil changes, right? So I'm focused as the CFO is making sure we're making smart investments, have a full understanding of what the life cycle costs are. That includes what's the maintenance and sustainment philosophy, and then how do we budget that over the long term? Because those decisions that you make now have impacts 20 plus years from now, and that's one of the things that I'm most focused on as CFO.
Former role of yours was as the CEO of the Coast Guard Yard. How does that experience inform the way that you make decisions about not just shipbuilding, but
Sure.
Other aspects of management across the Guard?
So one of the things that helped me is running a shipyard, and that runs as essentially a nonprofit organization inside the Coast Guard. Understanding how industry operates, particularly shipyards, is really important when we're talking about budgeting for those activities. Making sure you have a steady order book for these shipyards and for acquisitions in general is really important, because one of the big things that I learned as shipyard CEO is you can make all the capital investments in the world you want in the shipyard, but if you don't have a workforce to do the work, you're out of luck. Mm-hmm. And often it takes 30, 40, 50 years to build expertise into a workforce. And so when you're building out your financial plans and your budgeting, you've got to look at the long term. You've got to give industry a clear signal that you're serious about steady planning and steady production, whether it's aircraft, whether it's ships, whether it's C5I systems. The other thing that I would say I took away from that experience is the importance of, as you build the requirements out for your new fleet, make sure you have the organic capability to fix it and maintain it as well. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes we operate assets long after commercial industry may decide, hey, it doesn't make financial sense for me to do support, fill in the blank, whatever the asset is. Mm-hmm. And so having some organic capability is really important to operate the Coast Guard.
Quick final thought, we're almost out of time. What's the biggest challenge that you see ahead, or what are the biggest challenges you see ahead to that vision that you just described to deliver the capability the Guard will need? You're thinking about now what you'll need 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
Yeah, I think continued funding is a concern, right? We've got strong support from my perspective in the current administration. How does that manifest over the very long term? In my mind, the way to address that is get these programs on momentum, right? Get some momentum behind them, deliver those assets with success, and then helping the American public understand what the Coast Guard does and why it provides value to the nation. It's not just about ships and airplanes and C5I systems. It's about the service the Coast Guard delivers to the nation and why we're a good return on investment.